We are reading A Course in Miracles. We're on chapter 21. Chapter 21 is called Reason and Perception. And we're on to section 5, which is called The Function of Reason. And Jesus is starting to talk specifically about reason now. And what is reason? So here we go. Perception selects and makes the world you see. It literally picks it out as the mind directs. The laws of size and shape and brightness would hold, perhaps, if other things were equal. They are not equal. For what you look for, you are far more likely to discover than what you would prefer to overlook. The still, small voice for God is not drowned out by all the ego's raucous screams and senseless ravings to those who want to hear it. Perception is a choice and not a fact. But on this choice depends far more than you may realize as yet. For on the voice you choose to hear and on the sights you choose to see depends entirely your whole belief in what you are. Perception is a witness but to this and never to reality. Yet it can show you the conditions in which awareness of reality is possible or those where it could never be. Reality needs no cooperation from you to be itself, but your awareness of it needs your help because it is your choice. Listen to what the ego says and see what it directs you see, and it is sure that you will see yourself as tiny, vulnerable, and afraid. You will experience depression, a sense of worthlessness, and feelings of impermanence and unreality. You will believe that you are helpless prey to forces far beyond your own control and far more powerful than you. And you will think the world you made directs your destiny, for this will be your faith. But never believe because it is your faith, it makes reality. There is another vision and another choice in which your freedom lies, awaiting but your choice. And if you place your faith in them, you will perceive another self in you. This other self sees miracles as natural. They are as simple and as natural to it as breathing to the body. They are the obvious response to calls for help, the only one it makes. Miracles seem unnatural to the ego because it does not understand how separate minds can influence each other. Nor could they do so. But minds cannot be separate. This other self is perfectly aware of this, and thus it recognizes that miracles do not affect another's mind, only its own. They always change your mind. There is no other. You do not realize the whole extent to which the idea of separation has interfered with reason. Reason lies in the other self you have cut off from your awareness, and nothing you have allowed to stay in your awareness is capable of reason. How can the segment of the mind devoid of reason understand what reason is or grasp the information it would give? All sorts of questions may arise in it, but if the basic question stems from reason, it will not ask it. Like all that stems from reason, the basic question is obvious, simple, and remains unasked. But think not reason could not answer it. God's plan for your salvation could not have been established without your will and your consent. It must have been accepted by the Son of God, for what God wills for him he must receive. For God wills not apart from him, nor does the will of God wait upon time to be accomplished. Therefore, what joined the will of God must be in you now, being eternal. You must have set aside a place in which the Holy Spirit can abide and where he is. He must have been there since the need for him arose and was fulfilled in the same instant. Such would your reason tell you if you listened. Yet such is clearly not the ego's reasoning. Your reason's alien nature to the ego is proof you will not find the answer there. Yet if it must be so, it must exist. And if it exists for you, and has your freedom as the purpose given it, you must be free to find it. God's plan is simple, never circular, and never self-defeating. He has no thoughts except the self-extending, and in your will must be included. And in this, your will must be included. Thus, there must be a part of you that knows his will and shares it. It is not meaningful to ask if what must be is so. Let's read that again. It is not meaningful to ask if what must be is so, But it is meaningful to ask why you are unaware of what is so, for this must have an answer if the plan of God for your salvation is complete. And it must be complete because its source knows not of incompletion. Where would the answer be but in the source? And where are you but there where this same answer is? Your identity, as much a true effect of this same source as is the answer, must therefore be together and the same. Oh yes, you know this, and more than this alone. Yet any part of knowledge threatens dissociation as much as all of it, and all of it will come with any part. Here is the part you can accept. What reason points to you can see, because the witnesses on its behalf are clear. Only the totally insane can disregard them, and you have gone past this. Reason is a means that serves the Holy Spirit's purpose in its own right. It is not reinterpreted and redirected from the goal of sin, as are the others. For reason is beyond the ego's range of means. Faith and perception and belief can be misplaced and serve the great deceiver's needs as well as truth. But reason has no place at all in madness, nor can it be adjusted to fit its end. Faith and belief are strong in madness, guiding perception toward what the mind has valued. But reason enters not at all in this, for the perception would fall away at once if reason were applied. There is no reason in insanity, for it depends entirely on reason's absence. The ego never uses it because it does not realize that it exists. The partially insane have access to it, and only they have need of it. Knowledge does not depend on it, and madness keeps it out. The part of mind where reason lies was dedicated by your will in union with your fathers to the undoing of insanity. Here was the Holy Spirit's purpose accepted and accomplished both at once. Reason is alien to insanity, and those who use it have gained a means which cannot be applied to sin. Knowledge is far beyond attainment of any kind, but reason can serve to open doors you closed against it. You have come very close to this. Faith and belief have shifted, and you have asked the question the ego will never ask. Does not your reason tell you now the question must have come from something that you do not know, but must belong to you? Faith and belief, upheld by reason, cannot fail to lead to changed perception. And in this change is room made way for vision. Vision extends beyond itself, as does the purpose that it serves, and all the means for its accomplishment. The function of reason is the name of this section. We're going to try to unpack once again the gobbledygook. If that was not making a lot of sense, I'm going to try to clarify it. It has been asked, why is the Course in Miracles so hard to understand? I keep talking about this, but it's worth repeating, especially if you're kind of new to these videos. Maybe this is the first video that you've watched. Hopefully this will clarify it. First of all, we have three main sections of A Course in Miracles. We have the text, which is what we're reading here. There's the workbook, which are lessons that you apply the theory that is in the text. So you actually do some work to apply the theory to your life. And then the manual for teachers, which is questions and answers for some of the questions that, the common questions that students of A Course in Miracles have. So those are the three main sections. Right now we're reading the text. The text is the theory, and you could also say it is the metaphysics. The basic metaphysics, to really simplify it, is where did all of this come from? God is the only reality for A Course in Miracles. God is the term the Course uses for the one reality beyond all perception, beyond all illusion, beyond the world we see, beyond all duality. There's other things we could say about it. Beyond the ego, beyond the limited sense of self that we have, that is God, and that is what we all truly are. That is what we are in essence. Not in reality, but in illusion, there was, the Course tries to give a way of understanding how the illusion happened in the first place. And it says there was this tiny mad idea. It was this little insane idea in the mind of God, and it took root somehow, or it seemed to take root. And from that came the universe of duality that we now experience. But in reality, that never really happened. It's a dream. It's just a well, let's just say it's a dream. It's all a dream. Okay. Now Jesus is in this section. And Jesus is giving this course. Jesus is presenting this course as a way to return back to your understanding of yourself as what you truly are, what you really are in reality, which is not separate from God or from anyone else. You are the one Son of God, and everyone else and everything else is as well. We are not separate, and Jesus says that in this section that truly miracles seem. I'm just going to read this. Miracles seem unnatural to the ego because it does not understand how. An ego is the part of our mind that we have been listening to seemingly forever, which is the loudest and the biggest attention grabber. whereas from the beginning, as soon as there were, Jesus says in the Course that as soon as there was this tiny mad idea, there was the answer to the tiny mad idea, and the answer was the atonement principle, which is that it didn't happen. This whole dream really never happened. Right? That's the atonement principle. And when we came into the dream as seemingly separate individuals, each one of us has within us this answer, and the answer the Course calls the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is that part of ourselves. You could call it the still small voice. This comes from, the Old Testament, the still small voice that is there to say, hey, hey, love still is. There's no separation. There is only love, and there's no problem. You are making the problem. You have chosen to be separate, and so you are experiencing suffering, and you're experiencing everything that goes along with separation, because you have chosen that. But you can unchoose that. You can undo that mistake, and you can return home again. So let's read this. We'll read a little bit of this section here. This is one of the first sections in the Course where Jesus is really talking about reason. He has not talked about reason until now. He has talked a lot about madness, right? He's talked about insanity and how the ego is insane. And it really started with this tiny mad idea. And the ego is wholly insane. That's the point, is the ego is totally mad. There's nothing reasonable whatsoever about the ego. The ego does not even understand what reason is. And that's part of the point of this section, is the ego does not understand what reason is. But there is a part of ourselves that knows reason. Otherwise, we could not separate ourselves from the ego and start to undo the ego if we did not have that reasonable part of ourselves within ourselves, which is the Holy Spirit. Okay? So miracles seem unnatural to the ego because it does not understand how separate minds can influence each other, nor could they do so. But minds cannot be separate. This other self is perfectly aware of this, and thus it recognizes that miracles do not affect another's mind, only its own. Because there are no minds really are separate. All minds are joined together. They seem to be separate, but that's the ego's version of things. They always change your mind. There is no other. God's plan is simple. And one of the points that Jesus is making here is that he talked before in the previous section about faith and belief. And he's saying that faith and belief can be used by the ego, for sure. And the ego does use them, but to serve its own purpose, which is the purpose of separation, to keep the separation going as long as possible, right? To keep you unaware that there's even a choice that you can make, that there's another choice. It doesn't want you to discover that. So faith and belief can be used by the ego, but the ego cannot use reason. The ego does not know of reason. So let's read this one paragraph. This might help. Faith and perception and belief can be misplaced and serve the great deceiver's needs as well as truth. The great deceiver is not Satan. The Course does not use the word Satan. Right? Nowhere in the Course do we find this. As far as I understand, there's no mention of Satan at all in the Course. I'll have to look that up. But even if it's used, the term that is used is ego. But here it does say the great deceiver, and it would be interesting to look up where in the Bible it says the great deceiver, if anywhere. I will look that up and check it out. But reason has no place at all in madness, meaning the ego does not know of reason, nor can it be adjusted to fit its end. Faith and belief are strong in madness, guiding perception toward what the mind has valued, meaning that we can use faith and belief to support the ego's madness, right? We can use faith and belief to see what the ego wants us to see, which is a world of separation, and that will be our perception. But reason enters not at all in this, for the perception would fall away at once if reason were applied. There is no reason in insanity, for it depends entirely on reason's absence. The ego never uses it because it does not realize that it exists. It doesn't even know that reason exists, just as it does not know that God exists. The ego has no conception. It's not like the ego is trying to get you to not be aware of God. It doesn't even know that God exists. Because if it knew that God exists, it would not be the ego. The partially insane have access to it, and only they have need of it, meaning we are the partially insane. We are not all the way there yet, but we're not completely insane. Jesus has said this before. We're not now completely insane because we have realized that we have a choice. And we can we can now start to understand what the ego is, and in realizing that we do not want the ego, we can start to make this other choice using our reason, using this God-given function called reason. The partially insane have access to it, only they have need of it, that's us. Knowledge does not depend on it, and madness keeps it out. Knowledge, though, does not depend on our reason. Knowledge, once again, there's two things, right? That Jesus tries to make this all very simple, and it is all very simple, at least according to what Jesus is presenting. Just as Jesus says there's only love, there's two things. There's love and there's fear. But in reality, there's only love. But in this world, there are dualities. So there's love, which would be the love of God that the Holy Spirit reminds us of. And there's fear, which is what the ego uses as a tactic to keep us locked in to the perception of duality. So there's love and there's fear, and then there's knowledge and perception. In this world, we perceive, and we can perceive either according to the ego, or we can perceive according to the Holy Spirit. And if we perceive according to the Holy Spirit, that is through the light of reason. We are using our reason. But ultimately, when our perception aligns so much in accordance with the Holy Spirit, we will have no more need for reason or perception, and we will return back to the realm of knowledge, which basically is God's kingdom, if you want to put it that way, or the reality, our true reality, which the Course calls knowledge, like knowledge with a capital K. You could call it gnosis, but really that's just another word. Don't get caught up so much in the words, but it's just to say that there's perception. Perception is part of the world of duality, and there's knowledge, and knowledge is non-duality, right? The part of mind where reason lies was dedicated by your will in union with your fathers to the undoing of insanity. Here was the Holy Spirit's purpose accepted and accomplished both at once. Reason is alien to insanity, and those who use it have gained a means by which cannot be applied to sin. Knowledge is far beyond attainment of any kind, meaning God is beyond attainment of any kind, meaning you cannot get there through your reason. All you can do is fulfill the conditions necessary for knowledge to dawn upon you. But that will happen in its own good time. But reason can serve to open doors you closed against it. Anyway, Jesus is going to say more about this. I'm gonna stop there. Hope this was helpful. I know this is all rather challenging. The Course uses its own. It has its own definitions for terms. It's really. It sounds very biblical. Sounds very Christian. It's clearly Jesus is using the King James Version of the Bible, but it's. Some have said it's the complete opposite. Or you could say it's the deeper meaning of what Jesus was saying in the Gospels, in the New Testament, that was misunderstood from the very beginning, or there was it was written from a dualistic framework. And Jesus is trying to take us beyond the dualistic framework in A Course in Miracles. So thank you for listening, and we'll continue. Next section is called Reason versus Madness, and I'm sure Jesus is going to take us deeper down the rabbit hole. See you soon. Shalom.